Son of a bitch. Ah, it's the wrong camera angle. It's the wrong camera angle. Oh no. Guys, we're going to have to do this again. I'm going to have to leave and come back, I think. Wait, oh, is it back? It's back. Oh my God, it's back. Thank God. All right. We had a little bit of a glitch here. Yep, let me turn it this way. There we go. All right, it's back. That had me worried. It was using my God knows what camera, which usually means we have to leave and come back, which is a disaster. All right, it's working. Welcome, TikTok or YouTubers. Whew, that was a close call. That was a close call. Hello, dog. How you doing, huh? Sasha's a little overheated here. Anyway, pick up my cord. There we go. All right. Welcome, YouTubers. Everything's good now. I'm feeling much better. Was getting a little worried when I saw the camera was messed up. All right, let me get TikTok rolling, guys. Ooh, this is like itching me too. I've got my little Bali necklace that I like to use to hang my glasses on, but it's like itching me today. I will pull it out. All right, here we go. TikTok. There's a lot of news today. Hey, Brendy. There we go. Okay, we are rolling. There is a lot of news, like I said. Do I have my pen? I don't have, I do have my pen handy. Okay. I like to number my pages as I go through the news. Hang on here. But there's a lot of news. There's some nasty news and some very good news. I will say overall, the war has taken a turn in Ukraine's favor, and I'm very intrigued. Let's just put it that way. It's just my gut, but things have shifted in Ukraine's favor, I think, in the last month or so. It's very interesting. But we'll talk about that. Oh, hey, Marcy. Thank you for that. Anyway, welcome, everybody. Welcome, folks on TikTok, YouTube. Thank you. Who was that? John S. with the gift. Yeah, so how are folks doing today? It is Wednesday, June 12th. I am John Aravosis. Welcome all. Thank you, Martin, for the gift. This is my show. We talk about the latest news from Ukraine, as you guys know. We usually wait half a minute as we start just to see what's going on with the, or basically give people a chance to arrive. So, I don't know about any polls today, Jake. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, McFadge. Thank you, Chazak. Lots of gifts coming in on TikTok. The latest polls for Biden are better. Interesting, actually, in the swing states. A couple days ago, actually, some very interesting polls. Again, it's still early. Our election is November, right? This is June. So what is that? 6 months away? 5 months away? Hey, Martin, thank you for that. Kevin as well. But interesting that the polls were better for Biden recently. Thank you, Marie, for the hat. Oh, anyway, welcome, everybody. So busy news day today. I actually went through and cut some of the news because we actually had a little too much news. So I've cut some of it back. Thank you, Bryce. There is, I think, very good news today. Also, at the same time, there's some nasty news. The good thing today is the nasty news is not today's nasty news is not indicative of how the war is going. It's just the Russians being awful human beings. Thank you, Colin. And we'll talk about it. But I will tell you two main stories of the Russians being awful human beings, and they will have no impact on the war whatsoever. It's just them exposing that they're a horrible government. And it's why, frankly, Putin was indicted for war crimes by the International Criminal Court, put an arrest warrant out for him because of the story we're going to talk about. Some very good news for Ukraine as well, which I think is absolutely fascinating. So let's talk about it. Thank you, Jono, for subscribing, or somebody for getting the subscription for Jono. I never quite know on TikTok because it never tells me. But we shall see. Sub sent to Jono. Okay, was it you, Jane? Thank you for that. Oh, thank you, River, for the hat. I thought it might have been a gift. Thank you for the gift there. Very sweet. All right, guys. So let's get rolling. So welcome, guys. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. It is my nightly show I do Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, U.S., where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. We also talk about other news, too. But, the U.S. elections as we get closer and closer, but a lot of Ukraine news. The way the show works is first half of the show, maybe half hour, maybe a little longer, I will go through the news that I pick that I think is interesting and relevant. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Tony, for the gifts. And second half of the show, we will take your guys' questions and everything else. All right, let's get rolling, guys. So Thank you, Jeremy, for the gift. And guys, please do keep the gifts coming throughout the show. I do this for a living. I do it full time, and your guys' gifts quite literally pay my bills and make this show possible. I am just like public television. I am not rich. Nobody else is funding me. I do this full time and have been for over 2 years with your guys' gifts. So please keep them coming. All right. So today is day 839 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation. Thank you, Magic and Nicholas, for the gifts. There some good news, as I said today. I'm the PBS of TikTok. Actually, except I didn't want to say PBS, Russell, because I thought maybe the Europeans wouldn't know what I was talking about, right? So there's that. It's public broadcasting in America. Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Lamb Chop. Thank you, Carly. So the G7, which is the group of the 7 largest economies, or 7 largest democracy economies, I should say, in the world, got together and has reached an agreement on providing Ukraine with $50 billion in aid by the end of the year using profits from the Russian frozen assets. That's great news. So yay. And I see TikTok is still over moderating. Let me see if I can adjust it really quick, TikTok. It has this automatic moderation feature, which honestly kind of sucks. It's too bad. It's too bad because I was really hoping that would have been a thing. You know, I don't think, let me look here. I don't know if it's going to let me adjust it here. I don't think it is. Filter comments. Oh, here we go. I'm going to turn off the filtering. Oh, hang on. Hang on. This is part of the problem. There it is. All right. I already turned off one of them. TikTok has this, you're going to laugh. TikTok that couldn't moderate something for, if their life depended on it. I mean, their moderation sucks, but had some kind of filter it turned on that would stop unkind comments. And it would look to see which comments were unkind. And it was literally like holding everybody's comments in TikTok. So anyway, I changed the setting. Let's see if that's better. Hopefully it's better. The mods will let me know because we see the comments first when they don't show up. Like we see them grayed out. So hopefully that is fixed. We shall see. Okay. So anyway, yes. So we start with the story from the G7, which is great. It doesn't do a good job. Well, we're back to normal now. Thank you, Marie, for the safari hats. So now it's got regular, there is some auto moderation going on, but it's regular auto moderation. So let's see. But I love unkind. Like, who knows how it picks an unkind comment? I mean, TikTok's version of unkind means anything critical of, China or Russia, but whatever. I digress. Don't want to bite the hand that doesn't really feed me. Thank you, Colin, for sharing the live. Bad story today. The Russians bombed Zelensky's hometown because that's what they do. Thank you, Pedro. No real strategic benefit, but it's Zelensky's hometown. Kryvyi Rih, they did a missile attack on it, killed 9 people, injured 29 others. Big surprise, they decided to attack civilian targets. And Russell, it totally banned your comment. So for some reason, it still is picking up on that being negative, which is interesting. Yeah. Interesting. It still picked up on it. I was surprised by that. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Super Hornet. Many gifts coming in. Good news from Ukraine. Okay. This next story is important. It is not just good news on its face. Thank you, Colin, for the gift. It is indicative of a larger trend of something is up in terms of the Ukrainians are getting nasty in a good way. Something's going on. Listen to this. I had to Google to make sure this was a new story because this sounds like the story I told you the other day. It's not. It's a new one. Thank you, Richard. Listen to this. Ukrainian forces destroyed 2 radars of the S-300 and S-400 air defense systems in several areas of occupied Crimea overnight last night. This appears to be the second, I should say last night or tonight. It's hard to know when they're reporting from Ukraine which night they're talking about, but in the last day. This appears to be the second attack on Russia's air defenses in Crimea in a week. You'll recall that I told you guys yesterday that over the weekend, the Ukrainians hit 1 S-400 and 2 S-300 anti-aircraft systems in Ukraine. They are systems that the Russians use to basically protect Crimea, which is a territory the Russians stole from the Ukrainians. Really quick, thank you, Marcia, for the gift. I know a couple came in. Richard for several gifts. Colin, Super Hornet. And I think I got the rest of you. Elizabeth, Charles, Adventures. Okay. Pedro and Colin. I think I got you guys now. Very interesting. Now, the Ukrainians have ratcheted up these attacks. They are going after Russian radar like nobody's business in Crimea. The S-400, which they attacked this weekend and reportedly destroyed another one today. It could be the same one they destroyed, by the way. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's possible that they damaged the first one and they hit it again. We don't know. Thank you, Mikey, for the gift. Appreciate that. Courtney as well. But the S-400 is a radar system that costs anywhere between $500 million and $1.2 billion. That's huge. I mean, it's absolutely huge. It is a very important system for the Russians, kind of expensive to replace, and the Ukrainians looks like they just destroyed one. What is going on here? As I think who is it? D. Lyle just said, shaping for planes. The Ukrainians appear to be preparing Crimea for an attack. Thank you, Suzanne. The other thing they appear to be doing, which Keith just said, shaping for F-16s. It is possible they're not planning an imminent attack on Crimea, but it's also possible that they are simply opening up the airspace to make it safer when the F-16s arrive, because the Russians would be using S-300s, S-400s, whatever, to spot the F-16s, attack them, etc. Really good news. Thank you, Marsha, for the gift. Really good news across the board. Very interesting that Ukraine keeps doing this, and frankly, they keep getting away with it. I mean, I think I asked you guys this before, and I don't know if any of you had an answer. Typically, how would the Russians, does an S-400 and an S-300 system defend itself? Is that, how do you defend it normally? Or do you bunch them close enough that they can defend each other? They're overlapping? Thank you, Hannah. Typically, how would you defend a system like this? Because I'm trying to understand why the Russians aren't defending them, or whether it's because the Ukrainians have taken out the other systems and it's made everything more vulnerable. Thank you, Hannah, for the gift. Just looking really quick, I figured I'd throw this out to some of you military-minded folks to see if anybody had an idea. Anybody? Just curious. They can't defend. Now, that's interesting. So Shadeblade says a good air defense should defend itself. That was one of the things I was wondering. Keith says the same thing. They should defend themselves. PC Noel says, I assume the Ukrainians are using anti-radar missiles. They're not as good as advertised. That's interesting, too, meaning the systems just aren't as good as you'd think they should be at defending. S-400 was supposed to be able to stop F-35. Ha, 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 says Keith. Interesting. Yeah, Crest, TikTok does that occasionally. It just sort of asks random people, is this stream okay? It's something that they do. I don't know how TikTok thinks it gives them feedback about spam or whatever, but it's TikTok. So, hopefully you gave me a good review. But Tom Price says they should have had SAMs nearby, surface-to-air missiles. Bottom line is, they're not defending these systems. This is a huge deal, guys. And again, it's indicative of shaping, which is Ukraine preparing for something. It may simply be they're preparing for the F-16s, which is great. And they're trying to basically make it safer for the F-16s. It could also be that they're trying to go after the, they're making Crimea weaker and weaker, which is really interesting. I think it's very interesting. This is in Crimea. Yeah, they keep hitting in Crimea, Deb. That's the really interesting thing. See, that's the thing too. Okay. If you're going, well, okay, actually, you know what that says, by the way? Even if it were F-16s, what's interesting, if they were doing it to prepare the landscape for the F-16s coming, they keep going after Crimea. Thank you, Liv. Now, do the Ukrainians keep going after anti-air systems in Crimea because that's where the Russians put them? Right? It's possible Russia has the biggest grouping of S-300s and S-400s in Crimea because they really want to defend Crimea. That's possible one reason. Another reason is because maybe the Russians have them spread around Ukraine, occupied Ukraine, but the Ukrainians are planning on using the F-16s to particularly go after Crimea. That's a possibility too, right? So, and again, I'm not telling you anything the Russians don't already know because I don't know, but there's a couple possibilities as to why the Ukrainians are doing this. Thank you, Tom, for the hat and mustache. Liv as well. And Jane for sharing the broadcast. So anyway, good story there. Another good story. Thank you, Marcy, for the hat. Another good story. Ukraine's military intelligence confirms that 2 of Russia's Su-57 stealth fighter jets were hit during a strike on an airfield this weekend, but one of them suffered only light damage. So too bad. The other one looks like it got damaged much more. Thank you, Red, for the rose, but still, good deal all around. I'm going to hang on a second here. I'm going to look one more because honestly, TikTok is still over moderating, just like TikTok to come up with something that kind of sucks. They're really bad. I don't understand tech people. How do you get paid so much money to work for a big company like TikTok and produce like such a shitty product sometimes? It's really, I don't get it. I really don't. Hang on here. Let me, I've got to turn off more of this now. Disruptive or repetitive. All right. All right. We're trying one more here. Trying one more. I've cut back another of the auto spam. Let's see how it does now. I am not convinced, TikTok. I know the overlords. I've got to be careful. The overlords are watching. Exactly. No, my problem is there's great tech folks in the world, and there's a bunch of really shitty tech folks. TikTok has a bunch of shitty tech folks. A lot of companies have shitty tech folks. They just, I mean, there's so many things that don't work with TikTok. Like I said, like the Discord. You guys who are subscribers on TikTok, by the way, the monthly subscribers, you're supposed to be able to access our Discord, the VIP section of our Discord, for free by having a TikTok monthly subscription. It doesn't work. It's been broken for the 2 years that I've been doing this. TikTok tried to fix it last year. They couldn't fix their own system that was broken, but they still offer it. They still claim that it links it. It doesn't link it. That's the kind of stuff that drives me crazy, because it tells me you've either got shitty tech people or you've got shitty managers. But it pisses me off. It really pisses me off. In any case, all right, let's keep going here. I know. All right. Beep. Okay, horrific story from the Financial Times. We're going to read a little bit of this one. This is a nasty story. It does not affect the war, which is good, but it is horrific. Financial Times, behind a paywall. I went there, was able to read it for you guys. The Russians, maybe you don't know, the Russians have been kidnapping Ukrainian children as trophies of the war. They've taken as many as 20,000 Ukrainian children. Several thousand are still there. The Ukrainians were able to get a lot of them back. Several thousand are still there. The Russians, basically, Russian troops went into orphanages and other places in the occupied territories of Ukraine and stole children. There are videos from the beginning of the war showing the Russians going through orphanages trying to find children. They found the children, kidnapped them, and took them back to Russia. They then tried to brainwash the children into thinking that they were really Russian, and then put them up for adoption. This is a new investigation by the Financial Times. I'm going to read you some of this article. It is this, by the way, what I'm telling you is the reason Vladimir Putin has an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court are the people that go after Nazis, okay? They're the ones who tried the Germans in World War II. They issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin because he has been kidnapping Ukrainian children in the thousands and putting them up for adoption in Russia. You do not steal children. You do not kidnap children. You don't take children as, war. I mean, okay, it's bad enough the Russians steal toilets and stuff, which they do, indicative of Russia. But they literally go and stole a bunch of toilets when they invaded Ukraine. They stole children too, guys. Now, only because some people ask, now they're probably trolls, but still, well, what if the kids didn't have parents? Well, here's a thought. If the children don't have parents and literally they're starving I doubt they are, starving to death in a bombed building, right? And you're there, the Russians, you control the area, then yes, you take care of the children, okay? You take care of the children. But you know what? There are prisoner exchanges all the time between Russia and Ukraine. You don't keep the children, right? You're a soldier. You come upon a bombed out building, right? Thank you, B Life. Right, Life. Is it A Life or B Life? A Life. Thank you, A Life. Thank you, Moi, as well for the rose. You come across a bombed out building. A Life again. Thank you. This child needs to be rescued, right? The child is in literally a bombed out building, and you're in charge of the area. Thank you, A Life. You're in charge of the area. So yeah, you get the child out of the building. Maybe you take the child for medical care, right? Your next step after taking the child for medical care is not to say, can I keep him? Right? This is not a CD you found in the building or a toy, right? It's a child. You don't get to keep it. It's not finders keepers. The next thing you do is you contact the Ukrainians and you return the child. As I said, there are prisoner exchanges. Thank you, Louis. Exactly. It's not a dog, as Carrot just said. It's not a puppy, right? Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Marsha, right? You go and you contact the Ukrainians, and in the same way that they do prisoner exchanges with the Ukrainians, which means they're able to talk to the Ukrainians, you return the child, because any civilized country doesn't grab a child, a baby, and say, can I keep him, right? I mean, it is outrageous. So I'm going to read you this article from the Financial Times. New article from the Financial Times. Financial Times is the big, by the way, I assume you guys know these things, but you may not. Thank you, Seer, and thank you, Steve and Antonia. Antonia is Greek, so I see Antonina, and I think Antonia, which is from Greek. Thank you for the gifts, and thank you, Steve. Thank you, Lori, as well. I'm going to read you from the Financial Times. They are the top financial paper in the UK. Thank you, Aviation and Adventures, and Lori. They are akin to the Wall Street Journal of Great Britain, I would say. Okay, for my taste. Very respected publication. All right, listen to this. Ukrainian children who were abducted and taken to Russia in the early months of the Kremlin's 2022 invasion have been put up for adoption by Russian authorities, in one case under a false Russian identity, a Financial Times investigation has found. Using image recognition tools and public records, as well as interviews with Ukrainian officials and the children's relatives, the Financial Times identified and located 4 Ukrainian children on the Russian government-linked adoption website. The findings added to the mounting evidence that the criminal court, International Criminal Court, Ukrainian government officials, and legal experts say point to alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by Russia. One of the children is shown with a new Russian name. And a new Russian name and age. They gave him a new age in order to hide who the kid really is. That differs from the Ukrainian government-issued documents. Another child is shown using a Russian version of their Ukrainian name. They changed the kids' names, guys. Okay? I mean, imagine they kidnap your child and then change the kid's name just to add to it, right? They list the kids under Russian names, and there's no mention of the fact that the kids are actually Ukrainian on the website. This is a Russian government website. The children were abducted from state childcare homes and separated from their guardians and relatives in towns across southern and eastern regions of Ukraine that fell under the control of Russia's invading army in 2022. The children range in age from 8 to 15 years old. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Putin and the Children's Commissioner, saying they bear responsibility for the war crime of unlawful deportation of children. That's it for the story. Guys, I mean, it is, as Alisoni just said, it's evil. This is why I tell you, people who try to defend Russia and say, they're not our enemy, they're right. They were, NATO made them scared and they had to invade. Bullshit. But let's pretend they're right. Let's pretend the Russia, I don't even know what to call these people. The Putin fans. Let's pretend the Putin fans are right. Let's pretend NATO is very scary and NATO made Russia invade. Did NATO make Russia kidnap Ukrainian children like little puppies and change their name and try to brainwash them and then give them away to Russian families, stealing them from their own children, their own family, their own brothers and sisters? Did NATO do that? Right? I mean, this is what I'm saying. This is how bad modern day Russia is in terms of its government. Okay. Again, the International Criminal Court has put out an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin. This isn't me saying it. This is the International Criminal Court and the Financial Times saying it, right? This is not something a civilized country does. This is not something a modern country does. Thank you, Johnny, for the gift, right? This is something despots. It's not just despots. This is something that a sick person does, right? If you kidnap children like puppies, frankly, I wouldn't kidnap somebody's puppy, okay? But kidnapping children and then putting them up for adoption and just giving them away to Russians when they're Ukrainian children, that is sick beyond a level that, and thank you, Ruben, for the gift. And I bring this up again and again because I know you guys are all fine with this, right? You get why we're helping Ukraine. You get why Ukraine's fighting. But it's important for people to know that all of those people who defend Russia in this war, I challenge you to find any country from Ukraine to any country in the West. And I challenge you to find them doing any of the crap the Russians do. Any of the crap the Russians do, right? I challenge you to find that because you will not find it. You will not find Ukraine or any NATO country or any NATO ally like the Australians or the New Zealanders. You will not, or South Korea or the Japanese. You won't find them kidnapping children and basically putting them up for auction, right? You will not find that. This is not eBay for children. Right? Civilized countries don't do that. Anyway, it pisses me off. It so pisses me off. Tom asked a good question. Thank you, Alisoni. Where are the parents? Well, They stole your children, right? I mean, imagine a foreign country comes in and grabs your children from you, right? The building is bombed. You're at work and they come in and they bomb your house, or frankly, they bomb your apartment building. Because in fact, the Russians keep bombing apartment buildings. They bomb your apartment building, and your wife and you are trapped in the rubble, and the Russians come and grab your kids. I mean, anything happens to the parents. Once the Russians have your kids, they don't know where they are, because the Russians aren't trying to return the kids to the parents. They're stealing the kids. So like somebody came in and kidnapped your kids. What do you do? And even worse, it's the Russians. It's an invading power. It's not like you can complain. First of all, you don't even know they kidnapped your kids. All you know is your kids are gone, right? Your kids are gone. What do you do? No, it is so freaking sickening. Some did. Deb said some of them thought they were being sent to summer camp. That happened with some of them. But as the article makes clear, that was not the only case. The article makes clear that they went into children's homes and things and took the kids. As I said, there's video from the beginning of the war that literally shows the Russians going through a child care center, or an orphanage, I think it was, and going through. And the orphanage people knew what the Russians were doing. And you see video of them grabbing the kids and basically hiding the children, because the Russian troops are coming through, mind you, and they're searching this orphanage really carefully, trying to find children. So suggesting that they were ordered to find kids. It is freaking sick. Kelly says, what are the Russians doing with the kids? Financial Times found out through an investigation they did, the Russians are putting the kids up for adoption on Russian government websites, saying, look at the cute Russian baby. They give them Russian names. They change their birthdays, fake birth certificates. They don't tell these people, they don't even tell the Russian citizens that the kids are actually Ukrainian. They just, no, I don't know what you do. If the kids are 8 to 15, you're in for a surprise, because these kids know they're Ukrainian, right? Now, what the previous stories had said was the Russians would tell the kids, by the way, here's the other thing. The Russians would tell the children, according to previous stories, either they would tell them your parents are dead, which is bad enough to tell like an 8-year-old kid, or any kid, right? Either tell them their parents are dead, or what really got me, the Russians, according to previous stories, would tell the kids that your parents don't love you anymore and they abandoned you and they said they don't want you. This was, I believe, in the New York Times story. The New York Times did a huge expose on this as well. Telling young children that you've kidnapped, your parents actually told us they don't want you anymore, right? I mean, absolutely sickening, absolutely freaking sickening what these people did. And thank God some of these kids have gotten away. They've gotten back to Ukraine. It's absolutely sickening. Absolutely sickening. No, I mean, it just is not even close to spoils of war. Yeah, not even close. Anyway, thank you for the gift, Kronos. This is the nature of who we are dealing with in Russia. This is the nature of who we are fighting and who the Ukrainians are fighting. And this is why so many people say Russia is an existential threat to the West, that Russia will continue with its war against Europe after it's done with Ukraine, because this is who we're dealing with, guys. We are not dealing with this. I don't even, again, unfortunately, I have to censor myself because TikTok censors political speech that doesn't go in line with, I don't know if it's the Communist Party of China or what it is, but it censors sort of political speech. So I can't tell you what I want to say right now, because I'm afraid TikTok will censor me like they do. Thank you, Ava, for the gift. But I will just say, normal countries don't do this. Developed countries don't do this. It is not something that a normal country and normal people do. We'll leave it at that. All right. No, it just infuriates me. Thanks to you, Aviation, and thank you, Kathy, as well, for the gifts. All right, a little more news here. The U.S. and Ukraine will sign a bilateral security agreement on June 13th in Italy. Norway is going to allocate $257 million to bolster Ukraine's air defenses. Oh, this is good, actually. This is very good. Thank you, Kathy, for the gift. The Norwegian ministry said that 125 million euros of that money, $134 million, will be devoted to the procurement of Patriot missiles for Ukraine. That's huge. Thank you, Mrs. Toad, for the gift. The Dutch government will provide 60 million euros, or 50.9 million pounds, to bolster Ukraine's aerial and naval drone purchasing. Ukraine, together with German arms company Rheinmetall, will start production of the Lynx armored vehicles in Ukraine. And then we've got Slovakia behaving badly. So Slovakia is the other country. Thank you, Maronel, I guess, for the donut. Slovakia is the other country that elected a pro-Putin government. God knows why they did. And the government there, pro-Putin, anti-Ukraine, it really makes me sick, actually, because, these are countries that lived under Soviet domination. They were part of Eastern Europe. They were part of the countries that the Russians held hostage for 45 years. And just like in Hungary, it's as if the people learned nothing from World War II. And they learned nothing from the subjugation of their own people. Slovakia was part of Czechoslovakia, right? It was a bad Soviet dictatorship. It was a communist dictatorship. Hungary, another communist dictator, not as bad as like Romania and East Germany, but still pretty bad. And these people learned nothing, absolutely learned nothing. But anyway, so the Slovakian defense minister has accused his predecessor of treason for sending MiG fighter jets to Ukraine. Okay? I mean, again, this is the creeping fascism that we're seeing in Eastern Europe, and you're seeing it in Slovakia, you're seeing it in Hungary. In terms of the elections, you are seeing it creeping stronger in France and elsewhere as well. And frankly, you're seeing it creeping forward in America too. Anyway, thank you, Michelle, for the gift. Let me keep going here. Johnny, they don't get the F-16s till August is the plan. It's possible that Ukraine asked about Ukraine getting F-16s. It's possible Ukraine got a few F-16s and nobody knows, and they're not telling people. I mean, we don't know, right? So there's some rumors that maybe they did. Thank you, Adventures. But as far as we know, they're not getting F-16s until probably August or so. Thank you, Adventures. Thank you, Adventures again. And who was the other person? Oh, either Warren, thank you for subscribing, or somebody who gave a gift for Warren. I don't know which. I saw that, though. If somebody gave a gift, thank you that Warren got. Thank Larissa for the hearts, by the way. Let me go a little on. I'm just curious to anybody else. I just wanted to see if somebody had given that gift that they got there. Beep, 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 beep. And thank you, Chinese or Japanese writing language person, for following me, I think. Johnny for the corgi. Hola, Rocket Surgery. ¿Qué tal? Numenon with the rose. Thank you, guys. I know. I think it's hard to know, but I think somebody may have given the gift. That's the hard place. Thank you, Kronos, for the hat. All right, guys. Let's do some more news here. Well, this is good news from Hungary. This is good news for Hungary. The Hungarians will not join NATO's planned steps in support of Ukraine, but they will not obstruct them either. Thank you, Rocket Surgery. So basically, Stoltenberg, who's our NATO Secretary General, said that he talked to the Hungarians, and they made some deal was reached with the Hungarians where they will not participate in helping Ukraine. They will not put any of their money towards helping Ukraine, nor weapons, but they won't stop the rest of NATO from helping Ukraine. That's a big deal. Thank you, Derek. I mean, that's a very big deal. Now, either the Hungarians, thank you, Kathy. You're being very generous today. I appreciate the ocean gift, the jellyfish. Either the Hungarians got threatened to death by NATO and basically said, you want to leave? You're going to leave, right? Or they bribed them, which is possible too. They may have bribed the Hungarians. So who knows? They could have done either one. They could have threatened to kick them out, or they could have bribed them. Hard to know which. Biden is expanding the use of secondary sanctions on Russia with an eye towards curtailing the sale of semiconductor chips and other goods to Russia, targeting third-party sellers in China and elsewhere as it looks to further choke off Putin's war. Basically, the Russians were still getting a lot of computer chips, and the Biden administration is now expanding the sanctions to try to stop that. That's good. Another horrific story I'm going to read you. I know we're going a little, we're not too long today, actually. I think we're doing pretty good today. The other story is that Agence France Presse, a big French news agency, basically the Associated Press of France, I'll call them for lack of anything better, did a story on the Sri Lankans that the Russians have basically forced or tricked into fighting for the Russian military. We've talked about this a lot lately. The Russians did this to Indians. They did it to Sri Lankans. Just recently, they did it to, who was I talking about yesterday? Oh, I'm forgetting, guys. Nepalese as well. They've done it too. Wasn't there somebody else? Oh, Africans. They're doing it to Africans too. Thank you, Spicy. Thank you, Kronos. They're doing it to African students now is the latest one they're doing it to. Where basically they're either tricking them or forcing them to join the Russian military. Sometimes they arrest them first to try to coerce them into joining the military. Again, no normal developed country does this. Normal developed countries do not trick you into joining the military and then sending you to the front. They don't do it. They don't blackmail you into joining the military. They don't. It just doesn't happen. It happens in Russia. Thank you, Vicky. Let me read you this from Agence France Presse. What they did to the Sri Lankans is particularly horrible. Thank you, Christine. Because the Sri Lankans are really poor and these guys desperately need money, and the Russians took advantage of it. Thank you, Andrea. Listen to this. This is from Agence France Presse. When Sri Lanka's economy crashed in 2022, people sought work abroad wherever they could find it, including ex-soldiers who joined forces fighting in Ukraine against Russia's invasion. Now the veterans, some of who swapped their life savings for what they thought would be lucrative non-combat jobs, are desperate to come back. These guys were told these wouldn't even be combat jobs, right? They would be administrative jobs. Thank you, Vicky. What we ask is to help bring back our husbands, said Renuka Karuna Ratne, who said her husband was duped into going to Russia by a devious agent. Colombo's parliament set up an inquiry last month to track at least 2,000 battle-hardened Sri Lankans who reportedly enlisted on both sides of the Ukrainian war, interestingly, including the regular armed forces and mercenary groups. With no communications for months and reports of at least 16 Sri Lankans killed and 37 wounded, distraught families are pleading for help. Advertisements shared on WhatsApp groups of retired military personnel promised monthly salaries of more than $2,100, 13 times the average income in Sri Lanka. That's what's so sad about this. Promises were also made of plots of land in Russia where foreign fighters and their families could settle. The woman said she and her husband, this is the really bad part. Keep in mind, $2,100 is 13 times the average income. So what does that get you? Was that 80? Not 80, $160? Alexa, what is 2,100 divided by 13?
2,100 divided by 13 is approximately
161. Okay. The average monthly salary in Sri Lanka is $160 a month. Okay. That would be 16 plus 320, 1920, almost $2,000 a year. Okay. $2,000 a year that Sri Lankans make. In addition to the Russians basically conning them into joining the military, sending them to the front and getting them killed, okay, telling them that they were not going to have combat jobs, but they put them in combat jobs and they're getting them killed. These people, okay, who are only making $160 a month or $2,000 a year had to pay $10,000 to an employment agent to get the job. These poor people who make $2,000 a year had to sell their homes, sell their businesses, sell everything they had to pay $10,000 up front for the privilege of joining the Russian military. 5 years' salary they had to pay. Guys, think about that. If you make $50,000 a year, that would be $250,000 your family had to pay for you to go fight in the Russian military. And then they lied to you and made you fight at the front line when you thought you were joining as an accountant or something else. Okay. And now they can't get out. Hang on a second. I'm kind of curious here. One quick second here. Yep. The woman says they paid $10,000. We have sold everything we owned, including jewelry, she said. We have mortgaged a part of our house too. She has not heard from her husband since May 1st, 1 month after he arrived in Moscow to take up what he thought was a non-combatant role. His last phone call was to plead to get him back home to save his life. That was 6 weeks ago. She hasn't heard from him since. I mean, guys, this is who we're fighting against. This is who the Ukrainians are fighting against. This is who we're helping the Ukrainians to fight against. This is not normal. Developed countries don't do this. Normal militaries don't do this. Normal countries don't do this. Normal people don't do this. They don't kidnap children and put them up for auction, right? They don't trick people into joining the military from poor countries and then lie to them and then send them to the front to get killed. This is not what you do. This is who we are fighting. This is who the Russian government is. This is what Russia is as far as a government. Okay. I mean, it can't be any more explicit than that. Sickening, absolutely sickening. And again, 5-year salary for the privilege of being conned by the Russians into fighting at the front against your will. You had to pay 5 years salary for the privilege of the Russians conning you. Absolutely sickening. I'm going to skip just nasty story next. Final happy little story. Lithuania will send Ukraine 14 armored personnel carriers. So that's a good thing too. We do have a number of auctions up over in our Discord community. We do have a Discord community. I do cool auctions for stuff from Ukraine. The auctions will end next Tuesday. I won't show you a lot of the stuff because I don't want to take your time because we've got a week for the auctions. But I've got a lot of cool stuff from Ukraine, including this leather bracelet that's very pretty with the Ukrainian trident on it. Very cool. We've got... Actually, this is probably my favorite thing. This is a former Russian shell from a BMP, and it was carved by Ukrainians into the Ukrainian trident and an angel. And it's very cool. It stands up, by the way, which is kind of cool too. But this is one of the most popular things we've ever auctioned off. A really cool. What else have we got? What else do we have? Actually, I think this is kind of fascinating. A little bit mixed. But it's a piece of a Ukrainian MiG that was shot down, which is unfortunate. But it's still kind of cool because it's Ukrainian colors. Might have been friendly fire. We don't know. Kind of a little scary there, but still kind of a cool piece of the history. And the final thing I'll show you is lots of Ukrainian candy. Vlad sent us a ton of Ukrainian candy, his favorite candy from Ukraine, chocolates, nuts, all sorts of things, halva. And we're auctioning that off too. So do go check it out. You can find our auctions over at our Discord community. Syndicate just put the link over on YouTube. The rest of you can find the link in my profile on TikTok. Go to my profile, click the Linktree link, and the very first thing that comes up is Discord. Click it and go over and look for the auctions. We've got like eight very cool stuff. Actually, I always try to have cool stuff, but there's particularly cool stuff this week. So go check it out. Oh boy, busy. I don't know, Carly. It's a good question. Carly asks, how long can the Russians keep up with the war before the financial economic collapse? You know, part of the problem is, actually, I need to put my fleece on my window to block the sun. One moment here. One moment. There we go. You know, it's hard to say. I mean, thank you, Martin, for the gifts. When Russia was the Soviet Union, they were able to go a very long time with an economy that didn't work and didn't function very well, right? And they spent a ton of money on it, but didn't go well. Afghanistan, they were in Afghanistan. They lost 14,500 men. That was considered a disaster. It helped bring down the Soviet government, but it took 10 years to help bring down the Soviet government. I mean, the thing that's interesting to me is Putin is very worried. Putin is very worried about domestic discontent. And it's the reason why thank you, Dive Hard, for the gift. It's the reason why he has not called a nationwide draft, because I mean, 1 million Russian men fled the country, right? The first time they sort of called up men, so to fight in Ukraine. So it's interesting that Putin is very worried about domestic discontent, but at the same time, it's not like the Russians have a big history of domestic discontent, right? They had a big revolution 100 years ago. They kind of had a mini revolution. They tried 2011 or so, I think it was. But that's about it. Thank you, Aviation, for the gift there. Having said that, I was reading a report today about the Russian economy overheating. Salaries, I think it was because there's a worker shortage. There's a worker shortage because 1 million men fled the country of working age. There's a worker shortage because 500,000 Russian men have been killed or injured in Ukraine. That's 500,000 taken out of the workforce, guys. Not just those 500,000, excuse me. Those 500,000 were taken out of the workforce. Russia's got, what's the number of Russian men now in the military, like for Ukraine? Is it 300,000, 400,000 probably? Thank you, Mama. So you've actually got 800, 900,000 Russian men that are out of the workforce. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. So I am not an economist. I studied economics, but I'm not an economist. I mean, but I am not convinced that the Russians can just keep going without serious problems with their economy. I think they're bluffing to a degree, that they're trying to be like, oh, we can keep doing this forever. I don't think they can keep doing it forever. I think they're hoping that NATO will chicken out first. That Trump will get elected and Trump will do what he does. Trump sides with Putin. He sides with America's enemies, not with America's allies. And he cuts off American funding, which the Republicans already did once at Trump's demand. Thank you, Luna, for the gift, right? American funding was cut off for 6 months to Ukraine at Trump's demand. He said, no, cut off the money, and MAGA Republicans cut it off. Well, what do we know happened? The Russians literally cheered publicly Trump And the Russians got the advantage in the war. Those 6 months helped the Russians tremendously in the war. Wasted a year and a half of American aid, in essence, kind of wasted because of Donald Trump. So there's no reason to believe Trump wouldn't do the same thing if he gets reelected, that he will once again side with America's enemies. And if he does, Putin can hold out, Thank you, Ernie, for the gift. Anyway. Not really. Fun isn't wasted unless you don't like freedom. I like freedom. I think we should defend America's enemies or defend America's friends, and we should stop America's enemies. And it's something Republicans, actually normal Republicans, still believe that. Bad Republicans don't. MAGA Republicans who aren't even real Republicans. They're not patriotic. They don't love our country. They don't really love God either, to be honest. I mean, it used to be faith and freedom. Like Republicans used to be, the party of God and the party of God, Hezbollah, but the party of God and the party of freedom, neither anymore, right? They shtup porn stars when their wives have babies. They go and they screw porn stars, and then they go side with America's enemies over America's allies. That's not very Republican, if you ask me. So, anyway, so yeah, this is the part of the show, guys, where we talk about whatever you want within reason. What do you got? Let's talk your idea, your questions, your comments. I see YouTube is having like a whole discussion on something else. I'm not going to have any more Swedish candy right now. I did a video of Swedish candy today. I've had enough Swedish candy for the day. Ava very, very sweetly has sent me a ton of Swedish candy. I did another video. I'm on my 4th video. It was interesting today, though, the candy. There was almost a licorice, but it was like a molasses licorice. Very interesting. And a sour candy that was so freaking amazing. Absolutely delicious. Cause I like sour, but it's interesting because the Swedish candy, it's, I think they're better than ours. Basically, I think they're better than ours, so anyway, Lindsey Graham does support Ukraine. The problem is Lindsey Graham doesn't stand up to Republicans who don't support Ukraine like Trump, right? American aid got cut off for 6 months. What did Lindsey Graham do? Not a single thing, right? I mean, that's the problem. The Republicans will literally bend down to Donald Trump on everything, including, again, religion, which is kind of scary. Thank you, Flower Lady, including American democracy, including our troops, everything. So it's great. And Lindsey Graham, who's a Republican senator, is very outspoken in defense of Ukraine. He even went to Ukraine recently. But when push comes to shove, Lindsey Graham let the money go, right? He let it go. Anyway, what else we got going, guys? What else we got? I don't know. Well, I can't just find a question just because you mentioned somebody had a question. It doesn't work that way, Deb. We've got a lot of comments. It just doesn't help one bit. No offense, but it just doesn't help. Okay, T.Y. Lamb, is that your question? Yes, I would start a family without fear of war. Of course. I think I don't mean to say what you're saying is stupid, but it's a stupid concept overall that people are putting out there, and they've scared people like you. This notion of, in today's world, who wants to have children? Well, you could have said the same thing about World War II, right? Oh my God, the fascists are taking over Europe and over Japan. Japan's taking over Asia. The Nazis are taking over Europe. Who wants to live in this world, right? You could have said the same thing in the 1930s. Oh my God, the Great Depression, the whole world's ending. My grandfather was rich, came to America from Greece, became rich, owned an entire city block in Chicago, lost all of it in the Depression, opened up a candy store afterwards. He had a candy store and a what do you call it? A diner, because he was no longer rich, right? They could have stopped having kids in the 1930s. Who wants to bring children into this world, right? Thank you, Tarad. Go back earlier. I mean, and again, I don't know my history as much as some people, right? But I'm sure you can find even better examples if you go through history, right? 1800s, 1700s, life got harder and harder back then. People didn't stop having kids, right? So no. I think I don't mean to say stupid, but it bothers me because I think some stupid people at the top started this messaging to scare kids. Oh, it's the climate change. Yeah, climate change sucks. So what do you, you're going to stop having kids? Like, I just think it's stupid. I'm sorry. Thank you, Tarad. Not to mention, if you're somebody who cares about climate change, you should have kids, right? We should have more kids who care about climate change, right? Create little kids who care about climate change too, right? No, you know what I mean? I mean, but no, it bothers me because I think people have scared your generation. And to be honest, there's an element of this. I don't want to say they've spoiled your generation because they started with the millennials. There started to be this notion of coddling people and telling you just that, like, oh, you're facing the worst stuff in history. No one's ever faced what your generation faces, right? And they're like, oh, houses are so expensive. Yeah, they're expensive when I was a kid too. Student loans are so expensive. Yeah, I had 60,000 in student loans 35 years ago. I got news for you. Hell of a lot more expensive probably than your student loans today. The economy is so bad. The economy is actually doing great. People lived through interest rates of 13, 14% in the 1980s. 1980s or 1980s. Inflation, horrific inflation, way more than what we have now in the same period, 1970s. World War II, Vietnam, where frankly people were going off to die, right? I mean, Ukraine's scary. We're not fighting in Ukraine. We were fighting in Vietnam. That was scary shit. But we've convinced young people, we've let young people buy this lie that, oh, it's just the worst situation anybody's lived through what you're going through. Bullshit. And by the way, it's not picking on young people, Shan. You want to lie to young people. I don't want to lie to young people. I think it's mentally abusing young people to tell them you're treated horribly. It's the worst world ever. I mean, do you want these kids to do something bad? Like, it's the worst world ever. Like, why would you tell a child that? Right? I mean, why would you tell a kid that? And frankly, it's not true. It's just not true. Right? You're not the first generation to live through a war, guys. I got news for you. And by the way, you're not fighting in Gaza, right? You're not fighting in Ukraine. Ukraine is Russia and Ukraine. That's it. And some Africans that they kidnapped, right? Gaza, Palestinians, Israelis. That's it. No one else is fighting there. I mean, it's bad, but it's not even a world war, right? We were fighting in Vietnam. It sucked. We were fighting in Korea. We were fighting in World War II. The French had all of their colonial bullshit they went through, but funding, it's easy. We're funding it. Funding, it's easy. You're funding it. You're not going to have children and you think you're the most oppressed generation ever because your taxes are going to foreign policy that you don't agree with. Give me a break. No, that's my point and that's why I say that I think young people have been sold a bunch of bullshit. They've been told, oh my God, life is horrible. You're the most oppressed in all of history. And I got news for you. You're not. A lot of us had economies again, this economy is amazing right now anyway, but all of us went through economies so much worse than you went through. We've been through wars so much worse than you've been through. Okay. World situation, the 1980s, we were like kind of close to nuclear war with the Russians a little bit in the 1980s. That's not happening right now. I mean, like even the nuclear war stuff, talk to your parents' generation or your grandparents. I never had to do it because in the Midwest, we didn't do them. But out West, I had friends in Montana. They literally had to do, in the Midwest, we would do tornado drills and we still do, where you've got to basically prepare for a tornado hitting and the alarm goes off and you go and you hide and this kind of stuff. My friends in Montana had to do nuclear war drills growing up, where the alarms would go off and they had to prepare for a Russian nuclear strike on their hometown. I mean, crazy. I hear that and I go, oh, I mean, I got chills even telling you that, right? Right. I mean, Tiger says hurricane drills. Hurricane drills are fine, right? Tornado drills are fine. Nuclear war drills? That's scary. Ash says she did them. I did not do that. That's interesting. That we did not have them. I did not have them growing up. Yeah. Montana had a lot of missile silos. Exactly. So, I mean, again, you didn't have that. Oh my God. Scott says gas rationing during the Carter years. We couldn't get gasoline. We couldn't buy gasoline in the early 1970s. The Arabs boycotted us. The Arab oil countries boycotted us. We could only get gas. I remember like whether it was every other day or something. I remember we couldn't get gasoline for our cars. Seriously. This is why I'm saying we've got to stop telling young people how bad the world is and how bad their lives are, because you're basically screwing up an entire generation and giving them a complex. It just pisses me off because it's just stupid. Thank you, user 829. Sorry, that was a very long way of saying you should not be afraid of having kids because people have been through a hell of a lot worse than you have. It's not that bad. No, things are bad, of course. I don't like what's going on in Ukraine. I don't like what's going on in the Middle East. But no, this is not the time to stop. Whatever. Yeah, no. was that, I assume that's what it was, Deb. Yeah. A lot of countries do the license plate numbers, and they'll do opposite numbers. Like today's an even number day, like the last number of your license plate. Today's an odd number day. And they'll go back and forth and back and forth. And those are the ones that you're able to buy gas basically based on which day it is. Yeah. Yeah. Jay says the same thing. We had every other day gas rate or rationing. Yeah. Yeah. You know, oh, the crime. My God. Yeah. Luis mentions crime in New York. Crime was so bad in New York City. Was it 1970s? I want to say late 70s. We had a whole series of movies about crime in New York, right? What was it? Escape from New York. This is a great one. I mean, they're bad movies, but a great one. Crime was so bad in America, New York City, that they turned New York City into one big prison. Was it the early 80s or the late 70s? They turned New York City into a big prison. It was Escape from New York. There was the movie about street gangs. What was not the Wranglers? What did they call them? You know what I mean? That street gang movie. The Wilders, the Wranglers. What were they called? Anyway, yeah, no, I mean, Warriors. That's it. Come out and play. Exactly. Warriors. No, I mean, my God, the things we grew up with that you guys don't have and didn't grow up with. Oh my God. Again, now you know, this is why it pisses me off when people try to convince young people that it's the end of the world and you're the most oppressed generation ever. In many ways, you've got it so good. Doesn't mean hey, historically speaking, doesn't mean your life is great, right? Life is hard. I mean, things are expensive. I didn't buy a home until I was 45, guys. I wish I had been able to expect. I couldn't afford it because of my student loans. Sound familiar? Right? Nobody's giving me my money back. I wish they would. Right? You know, which by the way is a whole other issue. But yeah, the crime in New York was terrible. Anyway, Mad Max. Actually, that's true. Mad Max was interesting. Mad Max wasn't Mad Max maybe the early 1980s? I'm trying to think. Did interest rates hit 20%? They did not, Doug. I remember the teens. Doug is saying 20% home loan interest rates. I remember my sister telling me hers was like 13 or 14% at the time for the interest rate on her home mortgage. And I was like, 13, 14%? That's insane. 18%? Get out of here. I mean, that's just crazy. Thank you, Dive Hard. Right? When I bought my apartment, it was like 4.875%, which was considered cheap at the time. But to me, that was still a lot. Then it dropped to like, now mine is 2 point something because I was able to refinance, but I'm terrified of ever buying another place, even though rates still aren't that bad historically, right? Yeah, now they're great breakdown, but 18%, wow, that's crazy, Super Hornet. Even 14.6, David, wow. Yeah, that's a hell of a lot of money. Social Security is another problem, absolutely. It is, and that's a big deal because actually the interesting thing, Social Security is our social safety net for seniors. Basically, it's our retirement, federal government retirement program for seniors. And when you're 60, well, in your 60s, you can start to take the money. The longer you wait, the more money you get per month. But a lot of the money, there was supposed to be a trust fund that the money was saved in. They don't. They tax it comes out of our taxes every year. The government's kind of spent the money, which is really obnoxious. What is really scary about Social Security is if you start paying it, like, you know, once you're my age, you start to pay attention to the little letters the Social Security Administration sends you. And they send you a letter and it tells you the estimate of how much you might get per month, right? Guys, it's not small. I mean, like currently, the amount of money I could get from Social Security right now, at least, is half of my monthly expenses. That's huge. I mean, I had no idea it could be that much. I kept thinking Social Security was going to be like $1,000 or something. I live in a very expensive part of the country, by the way. But half of my current expenses would be paid by Social Security. That's how significant it actually is, which is why every single one of you out there who's American needs to fight for it and don't let these bastards try to cut your Social Security. Because it's a huge, and yeah, then they tax our benefits. I didn't realize until Reagan, Social Security wasn't taxed. So you would get the federal payment every year if you're a senior and you didn't have to pay taxes on it. Now you do. That was one of the deals they reached in the 1980s. It's ridiculous. They need to increase the tax to pay for it. You know, and frankly, maybe they do need to means test it. I mean, rich people probably shouldn't get it, you know, The problem is people that defend Social Security will tell you if rich people don't get it, then rich people won't support it anymore, and they'll try to cut the money altogether. In other words, Republicans in Congress will cut money for Social Security if Social Security only goes to Democrats, because then it becomes a social program. And they're not wrong about that, right? If it only goes to poor people or poor and lower income people, nowadays there's a lot of Republicans too, but it's going to be probably more Democrats. So Republicans will no longer support it, and all of a sudden Social Security gets cut. So it's safer to have it go to a bunch of people across the board, because seniors like their Social Security even if they've got money. It's nice to have the money come in, you know? They do need to up it, though. You're right about that, too. That would be an easy way. Yeah, it's complicated how they tax it, but yeah. Anyway, Nick, because that's the way they built the place, I never liked it. Nick is asking about my sprinklers. I thought it looked goofy, but you know what? The apartment was affordable, and I went, I'll take it. So, what do you do? It's because it's a loft. It's supposed to look cool. I was like, I don't like them. I'd love to retire, but that's not happening anytime soon. Sadly, I am not worried about your future, Eben. We just had a very long conversation. You missed it. We had like a 15-minute conversation about why young people should not be worried about the future. The short answer is every other generation went through a hell of a lot worse than you. And they survived, and it's fine. What you're going through is, it sucks. But guess what? It sucked for everybody. We just talked about it. The wars were much worse when I was a kid. People were dying. Like, Americans aren't fighting in Israel or Ukraine. Americans were dying when I was a kid. People were getting drafted. We had, I was too young, but we were getting worried the war was never going to end and that we'd get drafted. Scary stuff. No chance of you getting drafted, right? Interest rates for homes, we were just talking this, we're up to 15, 20%. What are they at now? 6, 7, 8, maybe max, right? 20%, right? School was so freaking expensive when I was a kid. Horrific. So yeah, no. Anyway. You're not allowed to, Deb. I wanted to. Trust me. I recommended it, and I was told you're not allowed to. Yeah, you had to worry about what number in the draft you got. Dave got a 3% mortgage. Woo-woo. I'm sure that was a couple of years ago now. University free in Estonia. It is in many places, not in America. But yes, in America, it's very expensive. Sadly. Everyone's sharing their mortgage rates they got. 2012, I didn't realize, I forgot it was that low, I guess, back then. I guess that's true. Yeah. I don't really care what the Russians are doing in Florida, to be honest. What the Russians are doing is the Russians are trying to scare us, which is what they always do. It's one big bluff. The Russians can't win this war. They know they're weak economically. We are so much stronger than Russia economically, America and the West overall. We're actually stronger than them militarily. They've got more nuclear weapons, but it doesn't matter because more nuclear weapons don't help. If you've got enough nuclear weapons to blow up the world multiple times, it doesn't matter that the other guy has the ability to blow up the world multiple times plus one, right? Who cares? If you and I are in a gunfight and I've got 100 bullets and you've got 200 bullets and we're both pointing the guns at each other, one of us is going to die. 100 versus 200 bullets isn't going to matter. So, the Russians and us, our military, same number of nukes, even though they've got more nukes, it's the same. And we've got better military overall, better Air Force, better Marines, better Navy. So, and their economy sucks. Their economy's small. Their economy is only based on oil. There's no depth to their economy at all, oil and natural gas. So all the Russians can do is bluff. It just doesn't, I mean it. I talk about what the Russians say occasionally because I have to, but I just don't care what the Russians say because they bluff. They're not doing well in the war. And all they can do is go, we're going to nuke you. No, for real this time. I know last time we said we would 150 times, but the 151th time we're telling the truth. It's okay, whatever. So, mortgage free and retarded at 53. Yeah, shut up, Hedge. Shut up. Anyway, What else we got, guys? They have turnips. All right. Do they? Do the Russians have a lot of turnips? I don't know. I don't know. Deep, 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 deep. Oh, excuse me. What else, guys? Comments about the war? Anything? Politics? Beets? Beets sounds more familiar for Russia than turnips, but maybe they do have turnips. Do I think China will invade Taiwan someday? Will we help? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, other than Donald Trump, although Trump has still said good things about defending Taiwan. Trump, by the way, give him enough money and Trump will change his mind. That's the danger with Trump. But even Trump talked about bombing Beijing, the Chinese capital, if they invade Taiwan. The Republicans hate China. The Republicans would love to go to war with China if they invade Taiwan. Democrats don't hate China, but Democrats are committed to going to war with China over Taiwan if they invade Taiwan. That is, I will say the Chinese would make a huge mistake invading Taiwan because it is one of the few issues Democrats and Republicans are united on, is going to war with China. So now, if I'm China, I'm still looking at Ukraine and going, okay, but can the Americans really keep fighting? Well, fair enough. But on Ukraine, we weren't united. We're united on China. So China, if China's smart, they won't invade Taiwan. If they do, we're going to have a world war with China. And we're going to get hurt, but they're going to get hurt even more because their economy, their country, our economy matters, but theirs matters even more, Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate you saying that. Something's happening, Mikey. Mikey says, do you think the tide of the Ukrainian-Russian war has turned the last few days? I don't think the tide has turned. It's not like, oh my God, Ukraine's winning. But Ukraine's doing a lot better the last couple of weeks. They're hitting a lot of Russian targets. They hit those Russian stealth planes. They hit an S-400 system twice. It looks like they've hit 3 S-300 systems in just the last few days. They upped their attacks in the last couple of months on oil refineries. They've been doing a lot of damage to the Russians recently. They're hitting inside Russia with our weapons. That's making a big difference that we finally give the Ukrainians permission to use our weapons to strike inside Russia. The F-16s are coming. Depends how many, depends how soon, right? But that'll make a big difference. Cruise missiles from Britain and France. How many do they have? I don't know, right? Do the Ukrainians take out the Kerch Bridge? At least in the last week or two, it's just my gut. Things have gotten better for Ukraine. Things have gotten worse for Russia in the last week or two. But this war isn't ending anytime soon. Oh, and actually 2 extra Patriot systems, Deb. The U.S. is sending a Patriot missile system, and the Germans are sending another Patriot missile system. So that's another big deal for Ukraine. Getting 2 of those systems is huge. So it's good. It's good. But in the end, Ukraine needs the weapons to push the Russians out of its territory. That's going to be hard. But can they make it untenable for the Russians? Maybe, right? You basically strangle the Russian hold on Ukraine. You cut off the supply lines, and then you got a bunch of Russian troops. And even more, the Russians are bringing in Russian citizens. There was another story today I didn't even get to, was the Russians are basically deporting a bunch of Ukrainians from the occupied territories in the east and busing in Russians. So they're squatters. They're just taking over. They're ethnically cleansing eastern Ukraine and putting Russians in. Well, that's bad, but it certainly makes it easier for the Ukrainians because now you can just strangle those territories, right? Economically, just blow up all the roads, blow up everything. And now the Russians have got to provide for millions of their own people in territories that are constantly being bombed, territories that the economy has been shut down, okie dokie. It's not good, but I think that's where this war is heading to, is the Ukrainians are starting to shut down a lot of the Russian economy in the East, Is that true, Cliff? Argentina is going to deliver fighter jets to Ukraine? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, Millet, now that's interesting. I would not be surprised. Because let me pull this up here. The new Argentina, Ukraine, because the new president is very pro. Yeah, here. Wait, this is that's from a goofy publication. There's a story in a goofy publication. I don't trust saying that, but I would never trust it from some bozo publication. Now I'm only seeing I'm seeing it in all the fake places. Unless you can find it in a real news source, I wouldn't believe it. It's in a bunch of fake news places. Thank you, Pam Pam. Like places where nobody's ever heard of these things. Yeah, no. Right now, Cliff, I'm only seeing it in fake news places. I just looked it up. It's in a bunch of fake news places. Yeah, I'm not seeing it in any legitimate news site. Maybe true, but typically, if it were true, it would show up in AP, Reuters, the Washington Post, New York Times, BBC, right? It's not going to be Eurasia bullshit that no one's ever heard of and is probably run by the Falun Gong, So maybe, but we'll see. Anyway, no, Owen, because I don't care. We don't talk about that. I already talked about that topic earlier. We just don't care. It's the Russians bluffing again. I just don't care. I don't know that we're sending any. Sorry, Johnny D says, I remember them saying them. Not sure what you mean. The U.S. was sending 2 squadrons, 18 each of F-16s to Ukraine. I don't think the U.S. has said we're sending any F-16s to Ukraine. I don't think there's ever been an announcement of the Americans sending planes. The Europeans are sending planes. Yeah, the Europeans are sending planes, F-16s. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but the Americans haven't promised to send any F-16s yet. Pretty sure. When TikTok gets closed down in the US, you can find me over on YouTube, John Aravosis DC. One of the mods can put up my YouTube name there. You can also go to my profile. Go to my profile on TikTok, look for the Linktree link, click it, and you'll have everything there. My TikTok, my YouTube, my Instagram. Sign up for a bunch of the social media. Typically, you may not like me on YouTube, who knows? But YouTube's okay. YouTube we do every night here. I'll do the recap at the end, Dan. Yeah. Which we're getting to that point, actually. Israel has been pretty bad, Central Life. From what we know, it says, has Israel given any military aid to Ukraine? From what we know, Israel has been very bad about helping Ukraine. Netanyahu, who I'm not a big fan of, who runs the Israeli government, has been basically trying to preserve relations with Russia and has not been he's not been helpful at all to Ukraine. That we know. Maybe they did something behind the scenes. I don't know. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. But they've been pretty bad. Peru is sending aid. That's interesting, Jose. I did not know that. Very interesting. Ruble's having trouble, Steve. I don't know if it's collapsing, but part of the new U.S. sanctions on Russia that went into place today, U.S. and European sanctions actually halted trading of the dollar and the euro in the Russian markets. Russian financial markets, because they can't. So very interesting. I don't know. Apparently it makes it more expensive to do things with dollars and things like that. It just makes it a bigger pain in the ass, basically. We're not going to war, no, because the Ukrainians are fighting the war for us. It's kind of cool. We get to have our enemy weakened by somebody else doing the fighting. Not cool for the Ukrainians, but cool for us. Hi, dog. You doing okay? The dog is getting a little whiny. It's 7:15. I think she's begging. She knows this is around the time that I brush her teeth and she gets a little treat. So I may have to get up in a second and give her more water. We'll see. I'll see. Thank you, Taylor. I will make a last minute push for gifts, guys. As you know, I do this for a living and I do it full time. If you like the show, please consider giving a gift on TikTok, giving a gift on YouTube. The other thing you can do is join monthly memberships or subscribers, depending what they call it on each system, where basically you commit to give a donation. I think it's $6.99 or $5.99, whatever it is on maybe $4.99 on YouTube, because YouTube doesn't take as much. Thank you, Pizdolis, for the gift as always. And Christine and Hedge, lots of gifts coming in. User 829, Colin, Mikey Two Shoes. Thank you, guys. A Biden mouthpiece? I don't know. If you think Biden believes in freedom and democracy and saving people around the world who need help, sure, that'd be a good reason to vote for him, actually. If that's what Biden believes in. Thank you, Sweet Tater. I always love that. I love when, mind you, people like that, either they're Trump supporters, but honestly, they're probably Russians. That kind of stuff's probably a Russian, Thank you, Linka. Thank you, Sweet Tater. I suspect it's probably a Russian, because also, why would a Trump supporter come in and in the middle of talking about something about Ukraine, you're a Biden mouthpiece? We're not even talking about Biden, we didn't talk about Biden at all. We're talking about Ukraine and Russia and stuff. Remember I told you, you can usually tell the Russians, the Russian trolls, because it's a non sequitur. Thank you, Super Hornet. They say things that don't make sense based on the conversation we're having, because they're reading it off of a sheet. They probably don't even speak English. They're reading it off of a sheet and just typing it into the comments to try to get us all fighting or whatever. Too bad. Bad job. Ukraine bought 24 of Denmark's aging F-16 fighter jets in April. Maybe Ukraine will get them, WC says. That's interesting. Thank you for following me, Alan Elkins, on TikTok. Appreciate that. Some of you are Russian trolls. Although, honestly, I was going to say that person probably was a Russian troll. We're not going to say why. We're not going to say publicly why, but Ashley or whoever, that person probably was a Russian troll. Yeah. Ashley knows why. I've been doing, thank you, Jetta, for the gift. I've been actually working online communities since 1995. I built up my first online communities in 1995 doing politics in Washington, D.C. And in 30 years of running online communities and stuff, you become very good at smelling the trolls who are basically the crazy people. They're not the people who disagree. They're either crazy or asshole people, basically. People who are there to throw bombs and disrupt. Some people just literally come to these forums and they just want to cause chaos. They want to get everybody fighting and distracted. It's a lot of Russians. Chinese do it too, frankly. But you also get kind of crazy people on the fringes of politics on the left and the right who do it too. But you can always tell. You can not always, but you can almost always tell the ones who aren't disagreeing. They're just nasty people. You know, a lot of them are Russians, though. Yes. A lot of them are Russians. Yes. Oh, 1 second, dog. I know it's coming. She's whining. Putin's a troll. Exactly. Putin is I wouldn't say Putin's the biggest Twitter troll. We have other Twitter trolls that are big in politics too. Putin's one of them. He's one of them. Oh my God. These trolls are so bad. I was able to get that one just with one word, Ash. Oh, Annie, thank you. The giraffe, a very cool. The goat, that's true. I have not been using the goat today, although this isn't for Annie. This is not for Annie. Annie gave a gift, but that's for our trolls. That's true. I forgot to use our little troll thing. Twitter hiding likes makes no sense to me. Migio is asking, it's very complicated, but Elon Musk took away. On Twitter, you can like something just like TikTok and YouTube or whatever. You hit the up button or the heart or whatever, and you can click that you like a tweet, something somebody wrote. Elon's hiding it now, and I don't quite know. She's laying down by her water, poor thing. I don't quite know why they hid who is liking your tweets or whatever. I don't get it. I just don't even get it. People think it might be because Elon wants, I can't use the word because TikTok may get upset. Elon is having more, he just opened TikTok up to more naked videos. Let's put it that way. Adult videos. And maybe that had something to do with that. I don't get it. It's another stupid, he's a crazy, stupid man. It's another stupid, crazy move, you know? Well, we're allowed to be on the opposite side of the political aisle, Coach Owen, because Ukraine shouldn't be a political issue. Yeah, Elon's crazy. I mean, literally, the man. I'm kind of amazed he made money, but I guess sometimes crazy people make money. I think the problem with Elon Musk is, I think you've got to be. Thank you, Jetta. You probably have to be. I've always said this actually. I think to be a genius, you've got to be a little crazy, but you've got to be 49% crazy and 51% genius. I think people like Elon are 51% or more crazy, and they're just crazy, right? So that sometimes the genius shines through, but too often the crazy shines through. And thank you, Casey. When you're 51% crazy and only 49% nor sane, the 51% controls you, right? If it's 49% crazy, your 51% can try to keep things in control. But if the majority of your mind is nuts, the good part of you will come out occasionally, and the bad's going to go like this to you. But he's crazy. He's smart in some ways, but he's not a very bright man, which I find interesting too. He's not very smart at all. He's clearly not a smart man. It's sad. I don't hate Elon. Media says, why do you hate him? I don't hate him. I'm not a big fan of somebody who likes Nazis. He does. He's a big fan of them. He let them all back on Twitter. I'm sorry. The guy's weird. He's really weird. And he sucks up to like fascists and stuff too. I just find it really creepy. That's not something you should defend. we shouldn't support fascists. We shouldn't support Nazis. I don't defend Nazis. I hope you don't either. You know, he's creepy. Yeah. He also is homophobic. He's put a lot of really nasty, bigoted stuff he's put out there too. And he thinks it's funny. He does boob jokes about girls. Because I share this stuff with my cousin who isn't on, I have to be on Twitter for work. But Elon literally will share like boob jokes, like jokes about women's breasts and things on Twitter. And you literally look at it and go, okay, like if you're 13, we would give you a lecture about that. You're a grown man in your 50s, like with children, and you're making jokes about women's breasts. And I mean, it's gross, Omidi, really gross. Yeah. No, he's done, there's something wrong. That's what I'm saying. There's something wrong with him. And he, people like to defend him and say he's got Asperger's or whatever. I know people with Asperger's. That doesn't seem to be the problem, right? There's just something really weird with him. It's too bad. Right. The way he fired the employees, shut the door, everything. Ugh. His kids' names are weird, but I can live with that. You know what I mean? His kids' names are weird, whatever, I've got bigger problems with him with his kids' names. You're allowed to have weird kid names. You know what I mean? Yeah, I saw that. He's pissed at Apple now too, because Apple's putting AI in their phones. And I didn't quite see why, whether it's because they're not working with Elon, because Elon's trying to do his own AI thing called Grok, which, nobody cares about. And for some reason, he's pissed at Apple now because Apple's putting AI in the iPhone eventually. Apple stock actually, I didn't see what it ended up, but when Apple announced it like a day or two ago, nobody cared. And now today, Apple stock went crazy. Like people finally cared and they went, ooh, cool. So I think that really pissed off Elon. Yeah, some of the social stuff I can imagine, Tiger. Some of the social stuff. I just think he's as Kara Swisher said, he's an asshole. I mean, she's probably the top tech journalist in America. And she said about him once, and she was asked about it, and she goes, he's just an asshole. Like, that's the thing. He may have issues with Asperger's. He may have whatever psychological problems. He's got an insecurity complex or whatever, but he's also just kind of an asshole. And I think he's just a big child too. And, and not a child in a good way, right? We like it if you're a child in a good way. Yeah, exactly. Moon Zappa, WC Fields said, exactly. I'm not going to make fun of you. I think his kids' names are goofy, but because I wouldn't impose that on a kid. I wouldn't give a kid a name that's going to be just embarrassing when they grow up. But, I'm not too worried about it either. Anyway, he's a creep. Anyway, all right, guys, let me do a quick summary. We're at 25 minutes after the hour. I will pull my stories up here. We will summarize the news stories that we covered today, and then I will say good night to you, and I will be back tomorrow. Asperger's, I hope you're not, are you being funny, Tom? Asperger's, Asperger, I believe. It is I don't even know how you want to define it, medical condition, form of autism, I believe, on the spectrum of autism. I knew there was a B in there. Thank you. I thought there was a B. Asperger. But it's exactly a form of autism. It's not called Asperger's anymore. What the hell is it called now? Not that stupid neurodivergent crap. That stuff drives me crazy. I'm sorry, but all the PC renaming of stuff drives me up the freaking wall. Like, what are they calling it now? Spectrum disorder of autism? Okay, I just can't with this stuff. I'm sorry, but this is like liberal people come up with this crazy shit and like just call it autism then, or a form of autism, right? But spectrum disorder of autism. I just don't even, honestly, it's like hunger. What's the word they use for hunger now? Because it sounds more PC. Food something, not food threatened. What's the word? There's some word the hunger advocates use. And the first time I read it, I went, what the hell does that mean? And I'm sorry, but and I've worked on the left a lot, but people on the left come up with this crazy shit. Oh, it's not food insecurity. There you go, Tiger. Food insecurity. And I read that and I went, what the hell's food insecurity? Is that hunger? What is that? Honestly, the gay community now, God, every year they come up with a new name for the gay community in America. Now it was LGBT. It wasn't. It was lesbian and gay and lesbian, bi, lesbian, gay, bi. Then it became gay, lesbian, bi, trans. Then it became lesbian, gay, bi, trans. Then it became lesbian, gay, trans, plus somebody added on 2 years ago out of nowhere. The powers that be said we're adding a plus. So somehow it got none of gay people have no idea what the plus means. Somehow a plus got added on. Well, this year, a year ago, they added on a Q. A Q. Nobody knows what the Q means. Queer, questioning, we don't know. Okay. Now they've added a plus onto it and they've added an I. They've now added intersex hermaphrodites onto the name as well. And guys, I got news for you. You don't get to impose that on people. This is another, I'm sure it's another stupid bullshit. Oh, it's not just queer, it's queer and questioning, Ash. Correct. But which is also stupid because queer means everybody. This is my rant on this. Queer means everybody. If you've got, so lesbian, gay, bi, trans, everybody. Okay, well then we don't need lesbian, gay, bi, trans. Intersex, but I thought we had everybody. Asexual, that's another one they want to add on. Plus, and my favorite is plus means everybody else, but you already have Q meaning everybody. So why do you have lesbian, gay, bi, trans, everybody, intersex, asexual, everybody, right? It's absolute bullshit. And I've been a 30-year gay rights advocate. I'm one of the top gay rights advocates in America, by the way. I have been. You can go Google it. I was in the Out 100. Anybody who's gay knows what this is, LGBT. I was in the Out 100. I was picked twice as one of the top 100 gay civil rights advocates in America. I was arguably the number one gay rights advocate online in terms of using the internet in the 1990s. But this stuff's just bullshit. And frankly, we do it left and right on everything. And I'm sorry, guys, but we have let the far left take over. Democrats, folks on the left have let the crazies take over. Not like the Republicans. And the Republicans, the crazies took over. Thank you, BP, for the rose. They took over. Like the crazies control the Republican Party now, right? The Democratic Party, they want to take over. And they're trying, but they're not. Biden is not crazy, right? The crazy wing is crazy. They've taken over the LGBT movement. That's crazy now, sadly, but it's all crazy people now. But at least it's not, they haven't taken over the Democratic Party. On the Republican side, woo, crazy. Yeah. So, yeah, no, it's absolutely. Then they attacked the rainbow flag. Oh my God, I'm not going to stop. Leave if you don't like it. They attacked the rainbow flag. Thank you, Josh. Coming on that, the rainbow flag. LGBT movement has a flag of like 6 colors representing the rainbow. The rainbow, because the rainbow is every color. Everything making white light or whatever, right? The rainbow is every color. They decided to add colors, guys, for specific communities. But the rainbow already is everybody. There is no color for anybody in the rainbow. They've added the one color black for black people, one color brown for, I guess, Latinos and lots of other Arabs and lots of other people. So black people get one color. Brown people, if you're Arab or Latino, you got to share a color. If you're trans, you get 3 colors. 3 colors if you're transgender because you're special. They realized they didn't have Asians, so they've just added Asians to the list. Guess what color these idiots picked for Asians? That they just added to the flag. Oh, take a wild guess what color they're using to represent Asian people. The most racist color you could come up with, yellow. Yellow, which is the traditional racist color to label Asian people as traditionally in American society. The latest they're doing now, they put a big circle on the flag too. And the circle is for intersex people or hermaphrodites, which is what we call hermaphrodites now, intersex. It's crazy land. Guess who doesn't have a color on the LGBT flag? Lesbians don't have a color. Gay people don't have a color. Bisexuals don't get a color. Bisexuals, nobody cares about you anymore, right? Trans people get 3 colors. Latinos and Arabs get to share a color. Asians get 1 color. It's insane. It is insane. It is absolutely insane. Straight people, you'll probably get a color eventually. I guarantee you at some point we're going to add straight people because it's what we do. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. The rainbow flag, this is what they're doing. Literally, you should see what they call the LGBT movement in Canada if you want to see something ridiculous. It's like LGBTQIA, two-spirit, blah, 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 blah. I'm one of the top, longtime top gay rights advocates in America, Michael McAllister. You can Google me. Literally one of the top in the last 30 years, one of the most famous. But I got to be there by not accepting bullshit. I don't accept bullshit. Thank you, Flickr. And people on the left today, there is a major bullshit movement on the far left. The right's crazy. Again, the Republicans are nuts. And you look at Europe too. The right wing has turned fascist now in Europe. It's scary as hell. But in America, the left is like Looney Tunes. And unfortunately, it's a fringe on the left, but they're the left. Yeah, it's stupid, Louisa. I know what Two-Spirit is. It's for the indigenous people of Canada. Why do the indigenous, they tried that crap in America too. Why do indigenous people get like a special name for being gay or trans? Like, should we go to India and find their name that they use in Thailand? I mean, what does that mean? You know, what does that mean? Oh, user 146, I suspect you Google me. Like, you know, it's stupid. Why do you care about a name? What's your ethnicity? I'm going to name you something. If you're black, we're going to come up with a new name for you. How would you feel that if white people came up with a new name for you being black? I'm going to guess you didn't like it. If you're Latino and white people came up with a new name for you, I don't think you'd be really thrilled. So, all right, let's go on. So day 839 of Putin's three-day special military operation. These are the stories we covered today. The G7 has reached an agreement to provide Ukraine with $50 billion by the end of the year using profits from frozen Russian assets. At least 9 are dead, 29 injured in a Russian missile attack on Kryvyi Rih, which is Zelensky's hometown. Ukrainian forces destroyed 2 radars of the S-300 and S-400 air defense systems in Crimea in the last day. That's a big deal. Ukraine's military intelligence can confirm that 2 of Russia's Su-57 stealth fighter jets, thank you, Paul, were hit in a strike a couple days ago. Financial Times had a huge story on Ukrainian children who were abducted by the Russians and then basically put up, I mean, horrific. Thank you, Johnny D, for the gift. Put up for adoption and not telling anybody they were Ukrainian. They just changed the freaking name. I mean, horrific. Changed their names, changed their ethnicity, and basically giving these kids away and not giving them back to their parents. U.S. and Ukraine will sign a bilateral security agreement on June 13th in Italy. Norway is going to allocate $257 million to bolster Ukraine's air defenses, including $134 million for Patriot missiles. The Dutch government will provide 60 million euros to bolster Ukraine's air and naval drone program. Ukraine is going to start production, along with the German arms company Rheinmetall, of Lynx armored vehicles in Ukraine. Slovakia's defense minister accused his predecessor of treason. Thank you. What do we got here? Oh, I got Daddy. Did I think Daddy? I think I did. Thank you, Johnny. The Slovakian defense minister accused his predecessor of treason for sending fighter jets to Ukraine. Hungary will no longer join NATO's plans to help Ukraine, but will no longer block NATO plans to Ukraine. That was interesting. Joe Biden's administration is expanding the use of secondary sanctions on Russia with an eye towards curtailing the sale of semiconductor chips and other goods to Russia. Sri Lankans, Agence France Presse out of France, did a huge story about how the Russians have systematically basically abused Sri Lankan citizens and tricked them into joining the Russian military. Horrific story. You should Google it. I mean, it's just a horrific story. And finally, Lithuania will send Ukraine 14 armored personnel carriers. All right, guys, thank you very much. We've been doing this an hour and a half. I'm going to go. Always lovely to have such a fun conversation. Thank you, Dive Hard. I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for the gifts. Thank you for joining us tonight. Do check out the auctions over at Discord. Our auctions are over in Discord community. We benefit Ukraine, benefit my work as well. A lot of cool Ukrainian stuff. You can find it on TikTok. Go to my profile, click the Linktree link, and then look for Discord. Click it, go over. For you guys on TikTok, go to the comments. Go to the description of today's show. Not TikTok, I'm pointing at you, YouTube. Go to the description of today's show, look for the Linktree link, click it, and then click Discord. And that was another gift from Jeremy. Thank you, Jeremy. All right. Thank you, guys. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to go give the dog a little bit of water and brush her teeth, and then we'll see you guys tomorrow. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Oh, that's a good point, too, from Emil.